Hey there, toy collector friends and Transformers fans alike. Welcome back to the channel. I am the time-travelling toy collector, and this is the Autobot Blaster and Eject from the Kingdom War for Cybertron trilogy toy series from Takara Tomy and Hasbro. I cannot tell you how excited I am to finally get this figure myself in hand. I know Blaster is a really popular toy, but equally he was one of those holy grail toys of mine from the 80s, because the Blaster figure and the associated cassettes never made available in the UK. So I never owned an original Blaster, and always looked with hideous envy at the cartoons and the films. Just really wanted Autobot Blaster in my collection. And eventually I did get one, and I'll bring him out in a second, from the joy of online auction houses. And he was one of my first sort of recollecting purchases, but more on that in a second. But this guy is absolutely beautiful. We'll start off taking a look at the packaging. You'll see he's already out. Apologies for that, because I just couldn't wait, to be perfectly honest. And he doesn't have a standalone backdrop that we can use for display purposes. He's not a Studio Series 86 figure. I'm a bit disappointed about that, because part of me thought that Blaster may be issued as a Studio Series 64 figure, 86 rather, figure, alongside his compatriot Perceptor. But interestingly enough, he's come out in the War for Cybertron range as the last Kingdom figure, I believe. So anyway, here he is. This is the packaging. Some fantastic artwork again, as always. They never let us down with the packaging artwork. You can see here the reduced plastic window element to minimize plastic waste, which I think is notable. We'll spin it round to have a look at the product shots on the back. Very exciting action poses for Blaster. There is eject. There is in beatbox mode. There is eject his compatriot there. Beautiful stuff. And on the side we have the now traditional War for Cybertron artwork, and yes, authentic Transformers. Fantastic. So that's the box. Let's move that out of the way and focus on the object du jour. Let me zoom in a bit for you on this one. And here we have Blaster. And I can't tell you just how how brilliant this is. I often start in robot mode and then show the alt mode afterwards. I'm doing this the other way around this time, predominantly because I was mucking about with him and I just wanted to get the video done, and I'd already put him into this mode. But I just think I wanted to hit you really with the level of detail on the alt mode, as opposed to getting him into the alt mode, because it's incredible. The homage that's paid to the original, those of you who have the original or had the original, you'll be able to see that already. And there's little nuances to that in the transformation as well. But equally, this is really impressively a much up-to-date, very modern version of the sort of ghetto Blaster around which he is based. I love the speaker detail that we have here, either side. I love the additional speakers that we have here on the sides of the legs as well. Oh, the side of the legs, spoilers. But the side of Blaster's main form, I think that's really impressive. I love all the various controls, so you can see those dials and switches there. Of course, the handle, I mean, it's a little bit, in terms of how does it scale, I think the minute you start having Transformers that turn into microscopes or cassette players or radios or anything of that nature, or cameras, they're not going to be to scale with the rest of their range. They can't be. But this doesn't cause me any concern, because I actually just love it. There's a couple of little bit of sort of hollow activity there. on the bass, but you know, the bass isn't where we're going to be focusing on our cassette recorder. So I'll spin it around so you can see the back. There's a hint of a battery compartment here. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit spacey in places. It's perhaps not the best rear view of a transformer we've ever had, but then, you know, often the elements that are hidden on the back or at the bottom of these transformers are not it's not where the focus is going to be, is it? The focus is going to be on this, and I think currently this really is a really beautiful and well crafted piece of work. And again, it's coming in really closely, and you've got that blue transparent translucent plastic there in that compartment, and yes, you press the buttons and the compartment will open, he says. There you go. And inside we have, so I'm just going to set that on there for a second. Inside we have the rather crystalline looking cassette, which is going to transform into Eject shortly. But yeah, I mean, this is an interesting choice as well. It looks, don't get me wrong, as it stands, it looks amazing, particularly under these lights, with the gold detailing there and the translucent plastic. It looks really, really interesting. You've got there's a visible head syndrome, etc., around the back. But again, if we're looking at the front, then Eject looks really, really cool in this color scheme. I am aware, and I'm possibly too inexperienced a collector to have an opinion on this. I am aware that a lot of people are worried about the use of the blue translucent plastic, on the basis that it will stress and it will not last the test of time. And I totally understand that point of view, but part of my point of view is, well, I think it kind of is my job to make sure that it does. So I need to look after it, keep it safe, and not let it crack, and treat it with the respect it deserves. I'm sure all the other collectors will do the same, but I think there's an element of how you handle and look after these things that will impact on their durability and how long they'll last for. So again, there's not much to show off in terms of it's a translucent cassette. Again, it looks amazing, and I think they've gone for looks over logic, because I don't know when we would have seen a blue translucent cassette, whether we were in the 80s or whether it was some kind of rethought, a sort of MP3 player, or whatever it may have been. But yeah, so this is what Eject looks like in his cassette mode, which for now we will keep, as all good cassettes should be kept, in their cassette tray. So in it goes, in that goes, snap shut, and it's very satisfying. It's a very kinetic toy. It feels great. It's faux, nothing turns around or moves, but it's brilliant. I love it. I've always loved the concept of Blaster. I always loved Soundwave as well, to be honest, but again, another one that I didn't have as a child, being a little bit late to the Transformers party. So for me, Soundwave I had missed until I managed to pick him up as well, a little bit later along the way. So this is what he looks like in his transformed mode. I'm now going to take a second to transform him back into the robot mode we know and love, and then I'll also bring in the G1 Blaster for us just to have a little look from a comparison point of view at the slight nuances that are there that connect the two. But overall, I have to say, I really, really, really love this piece. I think it is one of their best contributions to the range, and I'm glad that he appears in it. I'm just a bit disappointed he's not in the Studio Series 86 range, as I mentioned, but hey ho, it doesn't matter what the packaging says. This is a Blaster I can get behind. Anyway, without further ado, Blaster, transform. And as if by Transformers magic, here we are, Blaster and Eject now in their robot modes. And again, beautiful, beautiful figures. I really, really love what Takara Tomy have given us here. Let's kick off with Eject, because he's obviously the smaller component part of this. Let's pop this in my hand there just to help the focus go. Again, it's really nicely detailed. The body outline, the body structure is very, very nice. The paint work, I don't know, will come in a bit closer on the head sculpt there, but he's got a fairly decent head sculpt there with the orange faceplate and the blue eyes that are pulled out there. And he's not the most overly articulate of figures. You've got ball joints all over the place. He's not the easiest to stand. Head's on a ball joint, shoulders, elbows. You've got some waist articulation there, forward and back, and then the knees, as you would expect. I mean, but it doesn't, there's not that much going on. And again, I would probably be very mindful about how I deployed him, given, as mentioned, those concerns about, well, what we may even consider to be potential stress fractures. Let me see if I can sit him down on the edge there, so he can have a little rest. No, he doesn't like that. I don't blame him. He's too excited about the new figure. So I'll pop him back on there. But he is a beautiful figure. But the main event here has to be Blaster. And as I say, this is a guy I've been looking forward to having as a complete figure for a very, very long time. We do have brilliant articulation, as we get with most of the, if not all of the Kingdom and War for Cybertron figures. So and his joints are so stiff. One of the reasons, in a good way, but I'm just saying that because I'm very mindful of the Blaster that I've got, which is again Generation 1, who is nowhere near as dynamically posable as this fella. And I know people have compared, well, quite a few of the Studio series and also the War for Cybertron figures with some of their Masterpiece collectible counterparts. I've never really collected any of the Masterpiece figures, so I can't comment, but that's something that I might have a dabble with. Maybe collect a few of those just to see what that's like, but I'm certainly not looking to replace this version of Blaster with something else. I really, really like it. I love the detailing. I love the facial sculpt there. It's very, very G1-y. I love I'm standing here sort of trying to tell you all the things that I love about it. It's really hard to find anything to say that I don't love. I mean, okay, there are some hollow elements within the forearms which aid the transformation. Could they have come up with something for that? Well, maybe they could have. The legs certainly are sort of like a 360 filled in section with the panels. Yes, there's some gaps around the backs of the legs a little bit, but very, very much unnoticeable. And again, I'm not looking at the back of the figure, I'm looking at the front of the figure, and even if I'm doing some toy photography, my focal point isn't going to be the back, it's going to be the front. So I'm really happy with this. I'm going to just pop Blaster back on here for a second while I reach behind myself and bring in this chap, who is, of course, Generation 1 Blaster, who has got, I'll just sort of start down here, very little to no articulation opportunities. You know, everything that he does because it supports and aids the transformation into the different modes. But nothing that he does doesn't aid that. And I don't have any of his G1, I'm going to get a headshot for you there, any G1 cassettes. So yeah, there he is peering in with his yellow eyes. You know, I love the figure. I'm so glad when I was able to get my hands on him. He's huge. I mean, he's really, really pretty huge. You know, particularly when if I move this along a little bit to the side, without hopefully knocking anybody over. Eject obviously taking me up on the offer to then fall over. We can see quite clearly, and I'll do a little pan. Eject's now being a bit cheeky, but I'll do a pan up and down so you can see sort of the key differences. That it's a bit of a scaled down figure, ultimately, from his G1 original counterpart. But again, I get that because his robot mode is in scale with his robot mode compatriot, so I'm not worrying too much about that. And yeah, Generation 1 Blaster was a big bot, and with a whole load of playability and robustness, because he's essentially some just chunky plastic. You know, just a lot of chunky plastic here, which is lovely and screams 1980s, doesn't it? Let's be honest. And you can see the beautiful homage to the original that's been captured in this new sort of War for Cybertron version of Blaster, but with the added perks of 21st century engineering. So Blaster Mark II, if you will, I know he's not Mark II, but in my book he is, wins on the engineering level, and also all of that posability, which gives him a lot of dynamic action that he can do, and little eject can come in really handy with some of that, although we'll be very careful not to see him get damaged along the way. But I'm just so looking forward to adding this blaster to this new blaster now that I've got him to my collection, but also being able to use him with the Studio Series 86 figures to recreate some wonderful stuff from the Transformers movie, as well as some my own range of toy photography. So yeah, I'm really not worried that I see this gigantic, technically speaking, gigantic and totally disproportionate blaster. As you know, he was of his time a very successful figure. Sorry, Blaster, to cut off your head. Very successful figure, lots of playability. I love him, don't get me wrong. He will always have a special place in my heart. But I think it's fair to say that our new, the new variant, if you like, this War for Cybertron variant, I'll pop Eject there so we can get nice and close, really brings with him a lot of playability and displayability, and I for one remain extremely excited about this figure. And I've already done a little bit of toy photography with him because I was that excited, so I'll tag some of those photos into the end of this video. I tend to say, you know, does this toy have a place in your collection? Well, if you're a G1 fan, if you're a Studio Series fan, if you're collecting the War for Cybertron figures, then you know what? There's no way this figure doesn't have a place in your collection, because he is everything you would want him to be. And I'm going to, just as I wind up now, I'm going to pull out just a little bit so you can see Eject in there as well. I don't want him to feel excluded from our closing shots. So, you know, I can only recommend this figure to you. He's fun and easy to transform. Again, a lot of the transformation is very reminiscent of the G1. There's a little bit more enhanced, and I won't say complex, but relatively speaking, complex transformation stuff in there that makes him what he is today. You know, it's a really effective modern take on that classic G1 figure, but nothing that detracts from the fun and the creativity and the imagination required to make the previous iteration come alive. So you can probably tell just how much of a fan I am of this figure and of Blaster in general, really. So I'm probably very, very biased. I hope this video has, I know a lot of people will have seen the other reviews of Blaster, and this isn't really a review, this is more just me yelling my appreciation at the camera. But I hope that if you had a chance to see him here, it'll help you make your mind up as to whether or not this is a figure that you'd like to add to your collection. Either way, if it's been at all informative and useful for you, do smash that like button. It really, really is helpful. And whilst you're there, add a subscription to the channel, because I will be going through all of the Studio Series 86 range as one by one. I'll also be looking at other Transformers toys through time, and I'll also be looking at other things such as Star Trek, Star Wars toys, Doctor Who, Battlestar Galactica, you know, lots of main genre type stuff, as well as a few oddities along the way. So there may well be something for everyone to have a little look at. Have a little peruse through the videos that are currently there, and hopefully there'll be something that catches your fancy. Anyway, thank you for spending the last 20 or so minutes with me. You have been a fantastic audience. I've been the time traveling toy collector, and this has been the War for Cybertron Kingdom Blaster and Eject from Takara Tomy and Hasbro. And thank you very much for staying with us. Just a reminder that a thing of beauty really is a toy forever, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a future video. Until then, take care, and one to roll out.